You know, in the Bible, it's filled with fables and stories. And one of those fables, but there's a lot of meaning behind it, was the fable around how God created the earth in 7 days. So there were 6 days of activity where things were done, but then there was a seventh day of rest. And that was kind of when creation was completed. It works exactly the same way when you want to create something in your own experience, right? So basically, you're going to you're going to visualize it, you're going to make sure that you believe that you've achieved it, etc. But you know when it actually comes into fruition, when it actually manifests, is when you in your own mind, or from your own perceptive standpoint, when you accept, I've done 6 days worth of work. In other words, I've done enough to satisfy me. Because remember, all you need to do is resonate or frequency match with what you desire, and instantly it appears. But because of your ingrained programming and beliefs and confirmation biases, etc., you believe that you got to do stuff, right? So once I've done enough stuff, in other words, once I've attended enough courses and I've done enough hours in the evening where I've studied and I've nearly killed myself, and once I've done enough of that, or enough marketing or sales or whatever it is you're trying to achieve, in other words, you've done 6 days worth of work in your mind, in other words, completion. Do you know when what you want manifests? The moment you rest. In other words, the moment you let go, the moment you absolutely believe at your core of your soul, of yourself, of your essence, of that awakenedness, that knowingness within you, when you know it at your core, and you stop throwing those anchors out, you know, those anchors of fear and doubt, and guess what? Yeah, those courses, those personal development courses that you think you've got to go to make yourself better, those are anchors. Those aren't helping you. Those are anchors, because remember, what are you resonating with when you're doing personal development? You're resonating with, I'm trying, I'm developing myself, not with achieving. Until you resonate with achieving, in other words, within your own mind, you've done that 6 days of work. You've done sufficient, in other words, whatever you want to call that 6 days. I was just using that as a way to kind of get your brain thinking a little bit. When you rest, that seventh day, that moment that you accept that I've actually got to let go. I've got to encourage those emotions. What am I going to feel like? What emotive state am I going to be in when it's achieved? And put yourself in that emotive state as often as possible. And what's got to happen? The universe has got to align everything. Why? Because you're now resonating, frequency matching with that. And as consciousness is the source of everything, you are creating your world. What has quantum physics lied to us and said? Quantum physics says, via the Copenhagen interpretation of the double slit experiment, what do they say? They say that there's got to be an observer, right? So because they don't believe in the construct of ether, and I'll get to ether in a moment, because they don't, or should I rather say they lied, confused and misled people for 120 years plus, telling them there was no ether, because everything in this realm is inverted, but that's a whole video that I'll need to make as well. But everything's inverted. So when you're doing experiments, you're obviously not going to get the same results. I mean, North Pole and South Pole have even been reversed. Think about it. If you expect something to be attracting and it's repelling, what is that going to do to your experiment? Plus, remember, when you control the purse strings and someone wants to get funding to disprove string theory or disprove M theory, and they say, no, there's no funding for that, but we'll give you $2 billion to go and prove string theory. So what are you going to go do? Try prove string theory, even though in your gut you know that it's nonsense. I mean, how can you have formulas for the small things? The big things are made of the small things, but the formulas for the small things don't work in the big things. Why? Simply this. If you, for example, this whole nonsense that they had going around where they said that men can have babies. I mean, there's a whole generation out there that believes that men can have babies. I mean, what a load of nonsense. Well, I'm sorry to say this to the quantum physics guys out there, but that's what you've been taught. You've been taught a pseudoscience where there's no ether, the construct of ether is consciousness. Consciousness is the source of everything. And the moment you bring ether into the equation, because it's real science, subquantum dynamics, because it's real science, the formulas, obviously the formulas for the small things work for the big things. Why? Because they're made of that. This nonsense quantum physics where they try to tell us there's no ether and there's a particle and an observer, what are they actually saying? By you looking for a particle and an observer, what aren't you seeing? That you are the creator. There is no observer. You're not observing it. You're creating it.